to another edition of the Ad Podcast. We've got a super fun guest for you guys today. Celia Jones is a seasoned marketing and brand strategist currently serving as Global Chief Marketing Officer at Finn Partners, a leading integrated PR and communications agency with more than 20 years of experience. She has shaped the marketing and brand narratives of disruptive agencies and challenger brands, blending brand strategy, integrated comms, cultural storytelling, and thought leadership. Before Finn, Celia was CEO of the Escape Pod, where she led the agency to multiple Ad Age Small Agency of the Year honors. And she has held senior marketing roles at Havas and Critical Mass. She holds a Juris Doctorate from Loyola University Chicago School of Law and a BA in English from the University of Notre Dame. Celia, thanks so much for coming on and spending time with us in the audience today.
Thanks for having me.
So I know I gave a little bit of a walk through a memory lane there, but always love to have a little bit of context for the audience. So do you want to tell me a little bit about, where'd you grow up, where'd you go to school, and how did you get into the marketing and comms and PR world?
Yes. So I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio. I'm a proud Midwesterner.
Let's go.
Yeah. Huge Browns, Cavs, Cleveland sports fan, living in Chicago of all places, but believe in fan loyalty, so wear it loud and proud. And then I went to Notre Dame, as you said, for college. I was an English major in Notre Dame. And then from there, I went to law school at Loyola. I had always thought that I would want to become a lawyer. At the time that I was, kind of growing up, I had a typical, Asian sort of tiger mom. My mom my dad was an English professor. A lot of people in the health profession. I'm Filipino American. I was born here. But,
nice.
There was always just, are you going to be a doctor or a lawyer? And I was like, well, I hate science. I did well in school, but I was like, I guess a lawyer. And I had seen at the time, I'm dating myself, but LA Law was going on at that time, which was a TV show. And it just looked really humorous. So I'm like, yeah, that seems to fit. But I never knew anyone who actually was in the practice of law. So studied English. At Notre Dame, they didn't really have they had business major marketing, but they didn't have, pre-law or anything like that. So I spent my time, soaking up the humanities and all of that, learning about the human condition, went to law school and quickly realized that I was not passionate about it. It was, they did the old, year one, look to your right, look to your left. Half of you will not be here after the first year, that kind of thing. And I was like, okay, this is going to be interesting.
That's a nice way to set the tone, right?
Yeah. But it was, it was a learning experience, and it was, I think I learned a lot about myself. So there were a lot of people who were there and in it and have wanted to be a lawyer from the beginning of time. And, they're taking over their families' practices and all of that. But for me, I was like, all right, I love writing. I'm a great writer. I'm a great communicator. This will be good, but I just need to find my niche, and never found it. I felt I learned exceptional writing skills. So they would kind of train you to just, I went to school during the time of OJ. So that just to give you.
Yeah.
And regardless of what you thought about who was guilty or not, they taught you how to observe people. They taught you how to tell a story. In law, that you have to agree upon certain facts, but then it's how you tell the story about the facts to convince a jury one way or the other. So they'd be like, all right, you have the defense, you have the prosecution, and you just had to take those facts and weave a story that was compelling. So I think that's really where I learned how to make a case. Who's my audience? Is it a business stakeholder? Is it a person, just a group of regular people who just want to like you and believe you, think you're charismatic, whatever. Just that emotional intelligence, I think, in addition to just like bulletproof convincing people of an argument. So I learned that, but I learned, oh my God, this is not creative. And I'm got both sides of my brain. And I just kind of, at the end of law school, much to my parents' chagrin and a lot of rosaries that they prayed. I, I don't want to practice law. I want to get into advertising.
But you did pass the bar though, because you
I
got the
got my
designation, right?
JD. I got my JD. I did not pass the bar. I
Oh,
took
got
it
it. Okay,
once and I
JD.
was like, I was staring down like kind of the tunnel of my life. And I was like, this is so like at the cellular level, not something that I want to spend the rest of my life doing. So I just kind of decided like, I had been feeling like I can gut it out. And so that was kind of a testament to my just resilience and just like make it through. But at that point, I was like, why am I wasting my time? Like, I know that this is not what I want. So I just was like, I'm going to pound the pavement. I want to work at an agency. I want to get into advertising or marketing, PR, whatever that was. So just, I'm in the great city of Chicago. So all of the
Yeah.
iconic agencies, at least the ones that used to all be around, Burnett, FCB, all of them, I just was like, I have to try to just get my foot in the door and applied everywhere. And, I graduated with honors with my English degree. I was like, surely I could convince them. And I basically got, no, you're too overqualified. You have a law degree. No, you're too underqualified. You've never worked at a creative agency or anywhere. So I got my foot in the door at the Merchandise Mart, which if people don't know, it's just like the big interior design, like furniture and design mart.
I was there last week.
Oh, you were? Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I got my foot in the door as a temp. So this is like a thread throughout my life. It's just sort of, if you know what you want to do, you got to just grind. You have to prove yourself. You don't have, you can't expect people to give you a chance if you've got, a sus background, right? At that time. So I got in there and I learned about marketing communications and I was like stuffing press kits and so happy because I just finally got to be in a creative environment that also, just by like reading press releases and seeing how things worked, got a full-time job there at the bottom though, in the communications department and developed my skills from there. So I think you'll see this thread throughout all of the seemingly disparate either companies or agencies that I've worked at, which is challenger brands. Like I am a challenger brand. I didn't have what everyone else had. I didn't go to ad school. I wasn't even, on the marketing side. I didn't have any idea really what a career looked like, but I just knew I was a good writer and I was creative and I have both of these things. So, and then I learned, so I was scrappy. So I learned, I got promoted several times within the marketing communications department, got to work on really cool integrated campaigns for their design shows. So Modern Chicago Design Show or their antique show, launched Arc Digest home design show in New York with New York Times. Like, so just, the world opened up to me. And then got to see like just really like seismic creative icons like Ian Schrager, who's the guy behind Studio 54, who then ended up, starting the Morgan's Hotel Group. Like hearing these people talk just opened up my mind. I was like, okay, I'm here, at least in like the space that I want to be in and in marketing and creativity. So that was amazing learning ground. And then I worked for a Dutch IT company that was founded by these two Dutch brothers in their attic, literally. And I was like, okay, that's a story. They won R.R. Donnelley, which was the biggest printer at the time, at this German trade show, the world's biggest trade show. And they were like, wait, if we can win the biggest printing company in the world, surely we can go to market in the US. So I got recruited to like become their head of marketing. So I was like, all right, well, it always starts with a story for me. These guys like who came out of nowhere, who landed the biggest fish. Yes, I'll tell that story.
Yeah, that's great.
So I ended up working there, another software company, and that got I met the founder of Design Kitchen, which was a really very strong design-oriented boutique, like integrated branding and marketing firm. And then one of the principals recruited me there, and he liked my weird diverse background. And then I finally got into an agency. So it was like a circuitous path. It wasn't the path that most people had, but I also think that it's what's propelled me every time. Because, just showing that hunger and showing that even though I didn't have all the goods yet, that I was smart enough, and also just a student, like reading books and watching podcasts weren't around, but like, watching people talk and, who I respected or admired, just learning, and showing enough intelligence and savvy and curiosity to get a foot in the door and prove myself.
I love that. Yeah, I had a similar experience. I entered a UTA job list posting when I was in my senior year of college for some temp agency, literally. And they're like, I was hoping I would be able to get a gig lined up for, fall when I graduated. And they called me the next day. They're like, can you be I was at Santa Barbara, so only about an hour away. Like, can you be in LA tomorrow? I'm like, I guess so. So I show up to this house in Laurel Canyon, and it's Howard Bragman's house from Bragman, Nyman, Caffarelli. So I basically, for my spring semester, my last semester of school at UC Santa Barbara, I would drive to LA 3 days a week, and Howard would have a huge stack of notes on his desk that were all handwritten, like little scrap notes. And my job was to take those scrap notes and enter it into his Palm Pilot. So yeah. And then he sold BNC to Interpublic, and then he started 15 Minutes. And I was the first junior account executive out of his pool house, launching that agency. So yeah,
I love
sometimes you get your foot in the door any way you can. Just kind of a personal note, have you traveled back to the Philippines?
I went there when I was 7, so I was very young, and that was an eye-opening experience, growing up in the suburbs of Cleveland and just really never being surrounded by family, but never having actually had that authentic experience of where my parents came from. So I remember like a lot of roosters crowing, and my parents grew up very poor in a farm, type, environment, and small little barrio outside of Manila. Like it was like taking baths, like with the water pump, actually.
Wow.
But they were just lovely, like meeting these cousins that like so many like relatives, and, they were so welcoming and just loving and curious. And we didn't speak the language, by the way. My parents, being immigrant parents, didn't want us to get confused or be, made fun of for an accent or whatever. So they never taught it to us, which, hello, so pissed about that. My dad would actually teach Tagalog, which is the native language, to their friends' kids in our basement, because he was an English teacher, but he taught them Tagalog, but they wouldn't teach us.
Wow, that's funny. Yeah, the reason I ask is I just onboarded a new client that has a Philippines Manila office with 130 people. And the first thing they did is invite me to their Christmas party. And so I spent 8 days in the Philippines this last December, in Manila, Cebu, and then we went to where the whale sharks are as well.
Oh, nice.
And
oh
my gosh, karaoke, games all the time. They love to play games, like do challenges, and
yes.
whether it's pool or darts or beer pong or whatever. And like just such a culture with just such a great work ethic and a great attitude. I can see why it's the #1 destination that people are outsourcing to these days. Is
absolutely. The level of service, the care, the welcoming, the humility. Yeah, beautiful people. We actually have an office there too in Manila.
Oh, very cool. I love that. All right. So tell me about, so I see, so when did you end up, so you ended up at Havas next, is that right?
After Design Kitchen, I went to Critical Mass.
Okay. Yep.
I was at Critical Mass, which was another just challenger story. It was really.
And was that when Ian was still the CEO, or?
No. So Diane Wilkins.
Okay, got it.
CEO, before, so she was the CEO of the agency when I joined, and she, just another awesome story. Like a lot of people didn't know at the time Critical Mass was founded. So they were always headquartered in Calgary historically. Now,
Got it. Yep.
they were in Calgary, and they were founded by this Canadian maverick named Ted Hellard, who was like just sort of a cowboy, like, just totally like anti-status quo. And he founded the agency, like just with landed Nike as one of their first clients. And,
Crazy.
they created the first Nike ID. So, but the leadership kind of grew up within the agency. So there was some core leadership that grew up in the agency, but no one had his like charisma and like, hi, Phil Knight, let's like throw down and like, you can. Mercedes was one of their first clients. So no one knew about this legacy. And just if you were a junior person that was developed within it, how do you then step up and become a leader? And how does the agency, which is very different from the origins, position themselves and talk about that legacy while still kind of bringing it to the present? So that was, and I was hired to be the head of marketing, but I think my training at Design Kitchen, I learned about brand. So every time I'm applying for a role or have where it's like head of PR, head of marketing, or head of comms, I always say, you want this, but I'm a brand person first, and then I can do all the other things. I think one of the hardest things for agencies overall is branding themselves, actually articulating what makes them different. And that's kind of my surgical specialty. That's why, I did work on client stuff at Design Kitchen, but I pivoted and took that expertise to agencies and helping them really like, what was your origin story? What makes you really different? Like, stop talking about like what everyone else does and why you do the same things. Or at that time, they really looked up to RGA, which was like a really, hot shop that was winning.
Oh, yeah.
Remember
Digital
that?
transformation shop.
Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
We had it. We were the OGs. Like, we developed Nike ID back in the day and the first car configurator, but then
I remember that. I remember the Nike ID launch. That was wild.
So they won the Cannes Grand Prix, and then nobody knew who they were because they were like, oh, shucks, we're Canadian. We don't want to talk about ourselves. So anyway, kind of helping just get them confident and say, you know what, your humility, you're not, they would always say, we're not the black turtleneck New York. You're not, but that's good. Like, own who you are, and that will attract clients. Pull through the work, pull through like the UX kind of user-centered design that you've always had, but bring it to the present. So that was kind of the journey there, which now, like, they've just, they do have a presence in New York. They do have that realization. You can be in New York. They're in the, they got a lot of talent that's from Brooklyn and, just like that creative energy, but they're still who they are. They're not trying to be somebody else. Right.
Love it.
So then
good.
Yeah. And Havas was, Havas Chicago was very different at the time than the regular Havas, where the leaders were trying to be very disruptive to traditional advertising. So they were hiring creators off the street, and they were trying to be, just very.
Was that during like the John Osborne tenure? Was he the one doing a lot of that stuff?
It was a Jason Peterson era.
Jason. Yep. Mm-hmm.
So, whatever in my role, I think it was a differentiated story, right? Nobody was doing what they were doing or talking about it in that way. Was it disruptive? Yeah. Was it polarizing? 100% to a lot of people, but it also did attract certain clients. At the time, which was really interesting from a brand perspective, they had this positioning around reinvigorating iconic American brands, because they had brands like Sears and, they had a lot of like legacy Reynolds Wrap. So to be able to say, look across your portfolio and say, all right, these brands have legacy, but we're reinvigorating them and hacking culture, bringing them into culture and using social and using really disruptive creative ideas to get them into the zeitgeist. That was powerful. So from that perspective, again, it's a unique story. There's total clarity in what they stood for and who they were. And, that was, and then proven out by work, right? So you can talk all about yourself, but if your work doesn't prove that out, it doesn't matter, right?
Totally. So let's bring it up to current then. So when did you make the jump to Fin?
So I made the jump to Fin March of 2021. So it was
Nice.
after the pandemic, or it was right after though. So I, after leaving the escape pod, I had cut my teeth and worked at every different kind of agency, right? So boutique brand strategy, digital, above the line, big holding company, small upstart, just disruptor agency. But I've always been the person behind the scenes and kind of been through a lot at all these different agencies. And I kind of had reached the point where I was like, okay, actually at the beginning of 2020, I was like, I'm going to set up my shingle and like start freelancing and consulting because I really want to find somewhere that's like totally aligned with who I am, not just from a skill set, but a mission and my own personal values. So I've sort of been on this trajectory, which quite honestly, I think a lot of people are right now, which is, what do I really want to be doing with my time? I think that the pandemic initiated it, but even with what's happening now in the world, whether it's your choice or it's not your choice, like people are feeling like, anxiety or malcontent or what am I doing? Like, or just that lack of fulfillment. So I kind of was really excited. And I had been consulting with, getting back to working with clients versus like promoting the agencies and loving that. But also just keeping an ear to the ground. Like, I wonder, like, I knew like I had deal breakers. I actually wrote this down. So this is advice to anybody.
I love it. Let's go.
You need to like step outside of the day to day and just write down like, what are your deal breakers? Like, what do you do? What are, take away everyone's narratives. What do you do best? What are your deal breakers for where you want to go? Right? What kind of company? For me, it was independent. Like I wanted to be at an independent agency, and I don't necessarily have to be at a challenger brand. But that ethos is something that is true to me. Like, I'm not a cog type person where it's just like, I'm happy, like, doing my role. I'm very much a truth teller. So yeah. So challenger brand, like a place where I'm respected for my, just literally wrote it down. And I was like, let's see if that exists. I don't know. But it's like that clarity, right?
Yeah, totally.
And so I had never, since I'd always been on more the creative side of agencies, I had never really considered a legacy kind of PR agency, and I had never heard of Fin. I found out about them through a friend who we used to work together at a previous agency, and she had hired them to, she worked for a tech startup that was mission based, and she had hired them, and she's like, I love my agency, you should look at this place, it's great. And I was like, I'd never heard of it. So I went to the website and I was like, oh, interesting. It looked like, well, they needed branding help, so okay, fine. But and they were saying a lot of the same things that every other agency says. So I was like, well, that's interesting. Not really. I don't think that's for me, because again, I want someone who's just, at least has some sort of disruptive kind of, or
a point of view,
status quo. But I listened to everything. I went through the website. I listened to podcasts. The CEO said this one line in an interview that like literally like made me like stop in my tracks. He said, my vision is to be a world-class agency with a heart and conscience. And I was like, record scratch. What did he just say? And I didn't believe it, because everybody spews like things about themselves that may or may not be true. So I didn't really believe it, but I was like, that's interesting. Why would he say that? So then I started like looking in the places that you don't, if you're not doing this, shame on you. But like, even without AI, like everything's here for you to research a company and research the leaders, right? So I went into Glassdoor. What does it say here? I went into Google reviews. There were like positive client Google reviews. Like, who does that?
Wow, that's wild.
Agency. You know what I mean? Like agency, that never happens. At the time, he had like over 90%, like 90 5% or something approval rating as the CEO on Glassdoor. I was like, these are crazy. Like, and I was reading the comments. And then during the interview process, I was just like, I don't need this job. I'm going to go at it differently. I'm going to go at it with my list, right? I'm going to ask the questions of them. Tell me about this. Tell me about your culture. I saw this. What is, how is this is so different than anything I've ever encountered. And with every person I met, I was like, wow, this is real. This goodness and this sense of ethics is real. So that was like, okay, wait a minute. Let's see. Check. So it was serendipitous in that if I had never talked to my friend, I would have never found out about it. But that was just the door opening, was finding out about it. But doing the due diligence, like one of my favorite things that I always say to everyone if I'm giving advice, Scott Galloway, the Scott.
Oh yeah, the author. Yep.
Author, podcaster. He was talking about, it was the context of, if you're a brand and you say something that's not true, consumers can suss it out, right? And he was like, we're living in an age of weapons of mass diligence. So I was like, that's it. That if you're looking for a job, if you're a consumer and you're not sure about a product, if you're an employee and you want to do I believe this, my leader or not, you can suss it out. You should be doing the research. You should be finding out everything before you. And I did that, and I found out that it was true from so many different sources. So, and then ended up getting the job. And the last thing I'll say to that is I took a lower title and a pay cut.
Wow. Well, because you were the CEO of your last shop, right?
To go to a place that I felt was completely aligned with me, and I'll prove myself. I was their first head of marketing in the history of the agency. They're going on 15 right now. At the time it was probably like 8 years, a couple of years before their 10-year anniversary. They had never had a head of marketing. So the trust that had to be earned with that level of role, being entrusted to tell their story when they never had, get it. And for me, it was, this feels so right. And because the one thing for me about consulting was that I missed the team dynamic. I missed the creative energy of being jamming with people and coming up with, ideas and campaigns. And so that was something I always was like, if it exists, I'm going there. Find out it exists, I'm going there. And, the story in progress is that I've never been more entrusted or valued, because everything checked out, and Peter Finn, who's our CEO, is like, he's a business guy. He wants to grow. We've grown by acquisition. He meets with leaders and there's expectations, but he also brings people on with that same set of core values, and then he trusts you to go. So it's a really amazing dynamic. I have had less of, here's what you need to do, versus when I was interviewing, I was like, here's what you need to do. And they're like, okay. So I've never achieved more in my entire career in terms of accolades and helping to just kind of transform the culture, but just tell the world about this company.
Yeah, I love it. Well, I know we talked a little bit off camera, but I've had some experience firsthand, Finn being a client of one of my clients. So I've got to interact with you guys, and, I've had 2 touch points in my brief, experience with you guys as our PR firm. And one was just the hospitality, when we came out to London for the world travel market. It's not in your guys' remit to, host us and take us to these, media events and to introduce us to clients, because, we're a travel media company too. So helping us out on the business development side, not just the PR side. Like, you guys did more for us at that show, moving the needle on our business than, even on great stuff on the press side too. But the actual business results of hey, these are the 3 clients that we have that are there that you guys absolutely need to meet with, and setting all those things up. And then my other experience was I got media trained and escorted by one of your junior folks when you guys got me a keynote at Streaming Media this year. And just the level of preparation before the panel and the research, and then the hand holding when we were on site, making sure that we did the rounds and got to meet with all the right journalists and get our message across has been, A+. So thanks for that. And I can give the endorsement not only as somebody, featuring you on the show, but also, a client as well. So
the team is going to be really happy to hear that. And
yeah, for sure.
No payment was given.
Yes, this is not a sponsored podcast, and yes. I don't do much on the monetization side at this point, but totally. All right, so I think you talked about something that's really important, and I think this was also kind of a byproduct of COVID. There was always this adage of like before COVID, when people would criticize an agency's marketing, or if they would look at an agency's marketing and not see them doing the same things that they were telling clients to do, the excuse was always, oh, well, we're so busy doing this work for clients that we can't really do the things that we're telling you to do.
The cobbler's kids have no
Exactly.
Everybody would say with a smile.
Totally. But I think, with COVID, with, not having the opportunity for a couple of years there to do pitches in person and have the business development meetings and, having the relationships that, the industry was driven on before COVID and still is today. But there were a couple of, periods of time where agencies were getting evaluated and brought into pitches and being looked at consultants based on the work that they were doing. So how have you continued that trend with Finn in kind of, drinking your own Kool-Aid, so to speak, but also really establishing the brand, as, like you said, there's many agencies out there, there's many potential competitors. So how do you guys stand out within your competitive set?
In terms of the story, it's easy. Like, I don't need to reinvent the wheel when the CEO says my vision is to be a world-class agency with a heart and conscience. But that was buried. The lead was buried, as we say in PR. So for me, just pulling that out and being able to tell stories about not just him as a person, although that's a component of it, because the leader, I believe the CEO is the face of the company, but also all of the various practices and how that streams down into, for example, our health practice and connecting the fragmented ecosystem of health, which is, kind of the mission statement of that practice, or you've had experience with the travel. It's just like showing both how world-class is like the expertise and the sort of sector level expertise, but layered on top of that is the humanity and the caring, the culture of caring. So we tell stories about, everything from, give back volunteering programs for our employees to what we do as teams and how we support clients on a pro bono basis to, just broader industry things and things like what kinds of clients we will and won't work with. Like, that's something that we always talk about. When they founded the agency, Peter and the founding partners, they actually wrote a list, write it down, wrote a list of the kinds of clients they will not work with. Who has that, right? So how can you do that? Well, one, we're independent. So that spirit of independence gives us the ability to not just focus on maximizing shareholder value, but is this true to our values? And there's a very specific list of types of clients we won't work with. Gun manufacturers, for example, there's a list. So we've codified that. So it's been really cool to be able to extract things that people take for granted on the inside. And I'm like, wait a minute, nobody does that. We've got to talk about that, right? So simply just telling those authentic stories, and then also the creativity that exists within our work and the types of clients that trust us. CES just happened, and, we work with robotics companies that are, the Atlas robot, we're launching these incredible innovations. And so I think just being really systematic, starting from understanding who we are as a brand inside out, rather than, oh, we want to be like that, right? And just having utter clarity. Another thing that Peter says, which is really a resonant in today's landscape of agencies and mergers and acquisitions and layoffs, and is that, he proudly says we're an island of calm in the storm. And that's like powerful. Like I just gave myself chills. I didn't originate that, right? But he's proud to be an agency that cares about people. It's we're not just gonna, acquire and let people go and just chase scale, right? We turn away, millions of dollars of business because we get a lot of clients that are not aligned, right?
Mm.
In just examples of things that have happened recently within Minnesota, just giving people an opportunity and holding space for everyone, whoever feels um, a lot of people are struggling right now. So I think
Mm-hmm.
that's just a part of just being able to tell the story of the agency. We have incredible growth, we have incredible creativity, we just launched the first maple syrup sneakers for Denny's on Maple Syrup Day, that like collaborating with it. So it's like mining all the stories. It's like all the best bits, and being able to tell that has been, just really a privilege that I'm so proud of, because it's cool. And then being not, just kind of being the dumbest person in the room, like not being self-deprecating, but our model is such that we have really deep subject matter expertise. But then we can flex to whatever clients need. So, if you're, say, at a holding company where it's margin on margin, let's pull in that agency, and everyone's trying to just stack on, the costs
More
for
people in the
us,
room.
right? It's one P&L, it's one fin, but let's start with the subject matter expertise and what are your business challenges. And say you're a consumer, company, but you have supply chain issues that you need to address, or maybe there's sustainability, communications or expertise that you need. We can flex. You need influencer, okay, or just we're able to kind of morph and provide these bespoke solutions for our clients, that help them navigate. And that's something that's very unique, besides just the level of trust and integrity.
Yeah, that's awesome. I just was reminded of I ran into you guys at CES as well, because
Oh.
I interviewed the chief mobility officer of the state of Michigan on
Mhm.
behalf of my client Lawston. They have a travel podcast called The Layover, which I also host.
Nice.
And we brought her in to talk about how mobility and the projects that she's working on is impacting the travel sector in Michigan, such as the new bridge that's about to launch for the
Mhm.
Canadian border. So yeah, just again, great pros, and it was just so fun to interact with them.
Mhm.
So I also wanted to, you talked a lot about Peter and his core values, and using that as kind of a through line for your communication strategy. How do you operationalize executive comms, or the founder led marketing phenomenon, where LinkedIn is becoming an influencer network? CEOs are now influencers with big followings on social media, in addition to the ability for them to go and draft off other publications and going on and doing news hits and things like that. But there's a lot of opportunity for executives to kind of own their own communication channels and
Mhm.
spread the word to the masses through social platforms like LinkedIn and others. How are you, taking those core values and translating that into, an executive comm strategy that really puts that to work for you in the social sphere?
That's a good question. I will say that a lot of companies are doing that, and we're helping them do that for clients. Um,
Mm.
it's a really important channel for business leaders. Absolutely. For us, it's all about authenticity. So, Peter's tweets, or not on Twitter, Peter's LinkedIn shares, for example, are his own, and he shares what he feels like, sharing that's important to him. And, when he speaks from the heart, and it's all authentic to who he is, which I think is really essential for his brand and kind of how we operate. I think the core values come through from an exec com, and quite frankly, all the way through, is that they're really a litmus or a lens through which people, or a conduit through which people even join Fin to begin with. So
Mm.
from Peter and the founding partners, to anyone who's hired, even they're being evaluated on, are they aligned with our core values? So that's, it's not just technical expertise, but it really is, does this person align with the values? So from Peter to the founding partners to our managing partners, and they're all they've been vetted to actually share those values. And then that message trickles down through them, so he speaks authentically from that core set of values, but as does everyone else who's a leader at Finn, because that's just a part of the vetting process, right? Everybody is sort of aligned to, those core values. People know them, we're evaluated on them. So it's really kind of ingrained. Any new employee who comes on board gets a letter from Peter that speaks to those core values. So it's really a culture, there's a lot of people that pay lip service to that, but it really is something that's, so authentic. I do know, for some clients, they'd prefer to have help with crafting those messages, but that's not, how we operate.
Love it.
Values are so strong.
So, PR is having kind of a renaissance right now, mainly because AI takes PR quotes and PR links and third-party endorsements and plugs in news as part of how it, looks for information and serves up, AEO optimized content. How have you guys seen, PR kind of dovetail into this, new AI revolution where, everybody's looking at how do they show up in agentic search, and PR is a big part of that now. So are you guys leaning into that as part of how you're, evangelizing the discipline at large?
Yeah. So this is one of the most vindicating. That's probably I feel so validated in terms of just having a really sound brand strategy and PR and comms approach to even how we market Finn. So it can be a lot, for every agency, as you just said, it's hard to find the time for your leaders to be visible, to be writing thought leadership or doing speaking opportunities and all of that. But so in large part, I joke that I'm chief stalker, right? I just I sit on call, did we just win something new? Let's announce it. I'm that person that's and I have my team and everybody knows, chase that person, right? So some people are naturals at it and they do it all the time and they're prolific. Great, check. So we, but there's a lot of super smart people that are within their sectors and, just so smart and good, but their heads down on the work, right? But if you're not feeding the beast, if you're not just going out there and being visible, that's basic. So it's kind of what's new is old, in that, make no mistake, AI has been transformative, but the basics of getting yourself out there and getting press and thought leadership, making sure that visibility is constantly happening and you're feeding the channels and you're in the places where clients are. If you're doing those things, you're going to get found in search because all of that stuff gets scraped and picked up by the algorithms, right? By the AI agents. So we've been, getting found on because we're on all the top lists, right? All of the things that are basic. If you're not making time for it, it's hard to be scrambling to try to make up time now. That doesn't mean that you can't start, from wherever you are, but the essentials are important. You have to treat your own brand with the same amount of passion and value and rigor and diligence that you do, or else, now you don't have a footprint, right? So that's really played out in spades for us in terms of landing getting included in RFPs and landing really big clients through getting found on AI search, so I think, I'm a huge evangelist of that because it works, because we've experienced, I'm whew, thank God we've been doing that because it's found, right? The worst, if you're a head of comms or marketing somewhere, the worst thing is to have your CEO say, hey, how come we're not getting found, right?
Yeah, they do a search and then it doesn't come up, right?
Right. But I think besides that, like, it's just PR has, like I said, I came from the creative side of the world, the advertising, the marketing, and historically it's been, perceived as more of an executional function. Like, oh, here's the big creative campaign. Now tell PR to get us press for it. Or, if you're a company, I need to get press, right? That's the old paradigm. But it's so much more robust now, and it's so much more mission critical to the business. So PR has really ascended to have a seat at the table because it's about executive messaging. It's about messaging that impacts all of your stakeholders, whether it's shareholders, whether it's, the board, it's your employees, it's your customers, right? So you are now, and it's crisis management.
Mhm.
It's so critical, it's so important, it's so multifaceted that if you would have asked me what I like, is that where, I wouldn't have expected that, where we're sitting today, it's playing such a huge role in businesses and growth and culture than ever before. It's amazing, actually, to see that change. So, and then I think the other thing is too, moving from brand reputation to brand protection. So the
Mm.
whole, new dynamic that everyone has to grapple with is that you have to be prepared. You have to mitigate risk. You have to anticipate it, understand, how the algorithms and how social media and everything is working. And, you can't react to it after the fact. It's too late. You launch a campaign. Have you done the due diligence up front to try to avoid any issues? Have you, we've launched a whole set of proprietary AI tools that are focused on exactly that, understanding, how do the algorithms feed into narrative manipulation? How do you understand
Mm.
how to frame a message or a campaign to ensure that the wording is right, the tone is right. You're framing it in a way that protects you and anticipates how it could get misconstrued, right? And then we also have like it's called Canary for Crisis. It's a virtual training, a crisis simulation tool.
Mm.
So whereas before, a crisis management would be like, here's the playbook, like, let's read
Maybe
that.
some role playing.
Right, exactly. And now it's, we can create a scenario. You're whoever's on your front lines, who's, answering or, communicating about it or escalating it to executives. It's all on this dashboard and it's real time, sweat inducing, what it would be like. And so, these are the kinds of tools. So whether they're proprietary or they're already in existence, you have to have a whole tech stack that, it backs up your human expertise.
I love that. And while we're on the topic of AI, my big question to agency folks these days is kind of the practical application. So last year was the hype cycle, and now we're getting into details this year. As a marketing leader for an agency, what is the most practical use of AI that has accelerated your role and made your life easier?
Mhm. So for me, and just for anybody, I think my other, I guess, to start out, like, I always talk about like the role of CMO and how it's changed. Like, change management officer is kind of how I view this role. And part of that is just understanding and seeing, like having a front row seat into things like this, which is a transformative technology across the agency. And how do we drive that through? And how do we give people the tools to use AI to help benefit their daily workflow? But, what helps a project manager versus a PR, senior lead on a client business versus someone on my team who's doing marketing and social, like, those practical applications are different. But the first thing is that we've invested in a lot of like tools and platforms, and we have constant training for our staff to just both training from like the technical aspects, but also kind of we have something called prompt and tell, which is people just coming in and showing like, here's a hack that I did for this. Like, to me, that has been transformative. So like we can invest all day long, but like, you've probably seen the stats about the millions, billions of dollars invested in AI tools by companies, but what's the ROI been, right? Like there's a huge
and who's using them and
who's using them and for what, what benefit to drive these efficiencies. But if you're sitting in a room and someone has the same role as you do, and they show how, they had to say, get up to speed on, a trend in an area that they weren't, or, in a sector that they weren't totally familiar with, the trend that was happening. And they show you their prompt process and what the output was to, kind of get to a base level to then layer on, like they show you how much time it saved to start with a first draft of a plan for, competitive analysis, whatever. Like those things are like game changers. So I think both for myself personally and for, just how we're kind of trying to make sure that people have that practical benefit to their day-to-day is that it's that level of multifaceted training and sharing, so that whatever kind of learner you are, it's absorbing, right? And then there are client-specific tools or gems or things that we develop that are, that can help account teams say get up to speed or, whatever. So, but I've also seen, and we know, like there's such varying degrees of tech literacy or embracing of tech or fear of tech and whatever. So you've got to meet people where they are. But at a minimum, there's an expectation that everybody should be using it, playing with it, experimenting at a minimum, right? And then, of course, finding ways that it benefits you. But yeah, that's a great question, because I think it is one of the biggest pain points. People can talk about the investments in the tools and their platforms they develop, but if it's not really driving a benefit, it's talk.
Yeah, it's kind of a vaporware, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I would love to get your comment on the rise of independent journalism. We're talking on an independent podcast right now about the marketing industry. And, there was probably a time in your life where the only people you had to worry about was, Ad Age and Ad Week and a few others. How has that complicated your life, but how has it made it, given you more opportunities?
It's a huge change, for sure. I think both for our clients and then even for ourselves. The traditional outlets are just losing their impact, their reach, their viewership, whatever it is. On the one hand, and even specifically with the human aspect, it's sad, it's rough. I think that it's harder for people to get access to objective information that's fact-based. But that being said, it is a new reality. And so I think that we do our best to vet, but are just way more open and excited to talk to people who maybe outside of that traditional lens, because, just there are more, the gatekeeper model is just, it's different. And people look to the people that they trust to get information. So in that token, if that trust is there and you've built a strong audience with your people, or, I think there are certain publications for me that I just, I feel like just have built that level of trust and integrity, then I'm all about it. I think that it's great. And I think it's just a reality. So the more that you can advance your message within platforms that you respect, I think you should do it, because again, those get scraped up by the, the AIs, right? But it's powerful, because I do think too, with influencers, that is a big trend where, influencers are no longer just a channel for brands and marketers. They understand that they have power within their community. So there's more and more of a, they're coming to brands and saying, I want a long-term relationship. I have this, trusted platform versus just here, give me the message, I'll pump it out, right? So it's an interesting time, and I think trust is at the heart of that, because it's post-truth, the lack of trust, and just it's proliferated so much of our daily lives, our society, and all of that. So it can be a powerful thing too.
Well, I don't know if you saw the story about I can't remember their names, but a couple of gals from Forrester just left and launched their own platform, and they immediately got signed by CAA and, flown out to the 1 billion follower summit in Dubai. And it's like, these journalists come into these news organizations and they build expertise and they build a following. And then they can kind of, as a solopreneur, unhook that audience and go do their own thing.
Yeah.
And I think, media companies are going to have to reinvent how they treat their employees, or their employees are going to very quickly become their competition. And, you saw there's a blog, there's a Substack, creator that I really love to follow called Meredith in the Media. And she's created just an amazing niche around, interviewing journalists and under the specific point of view of like how to comms people, approach them for stories. And
right.
It's powerful. She's in Davos this week, I think. So
Yeah.
It's crazy. It's an exciting time, and I'm definitely here for it, obviously. So
I know, good for you. Honestly, like, I think it's great. And I'm a huge, going back to the challenger brand thing, like, there's many agencies right now that are being founded by people who've either gotten let go or they've left and started their own thing, and more power to them. I mean, I think, it's the industry in so many ways has gotten bloated. It's gotten, it has gotten inefficient. It has not always served the needs of clients or people who are looking for that content. So if somebody moves on and starts their own thing, like, and has like a point of view and can bring value to the dialogue around a certain topic, I love that. I think it's great. They do, like you said, they do have their sort of equity they've built on a certain beat or a specific topic. And, I think that if you're creating something of quality that is attracting people, I like, one of my favorite agencies right now is Mischief. And, that's
I just talked to them.
Did you?
I haven't, funny enough, I haven't interviewed anybody over there. I would love to. I actually talked to them more in a business development, my day job, part of what I do. But really smart folks, obviously just killing it on the creative side, and also, just have a pretty strong media department now too.
Right. But they, Greg Hung was very open about getting let go from BBDO. So he was just like, you know what? And then he started this agency, and the ethos, talk about brand clarity and like just brand, messaging, just so clear on who you are. Mischief, disrupting, and just attracting, self-selecting the clients that want to work with them and they want to work with, because you share that same ethos. It's so easy if you have clarity. Once you start to get bigger, it's harder to have a clearer narrative, but here, High Dive is another one here in Chicago. It's the same.
Oh yeah.
They
collaborated with them a little on Jeep. They're great.
And small doesn't have to be weak. Small is mighty. It's more nimble. Sure. It's powerful, But the flip side is, like, for our size, it's that we have the stability and all of these other offerings around us. So, it's just understanding where you fit in the marketplace and creating something that's valuable that people need, and they'll find you, right? Whether you're a person who's a singular solopreneur or whatever,
Love it. Well, Celia, such a pleasure. Sorry that we didn't get to connect in Chicago, but I look forward to next time I'm in the Windy City and being able to maybe meet you in person. If you could send the audience to connect with you directly or learn more about Finn, where would you like to point the audience?
They can go to our website at finnpartners.com, or they can reach me at my email at, do we give emails?
Hey, it's up to you. Anything you're willing to give, It's funny. I always was a little wary about putting my email out there. And I put my email and my phone number out in my ads now, and it's great. I get text messages from strangers and I get emails from people, all over the place. And, I feel like all that stuff is out there at this
I know
point.
it's out there anyway. So so my email address is celia.jones@finpartners.com. So celia.jones, Jones @finpartners.com.
Amazing. And for everybody who's watching, if this is the first time you're seeing the show, don't forget to give us a subscribe or a follow. If you're listening to the show and you enjoyed what we put down, if you give us an honest review, that's how we find a larger audience organically. And last but not least, if there's a comms person out there, maybe somebody in the journalism space or a marketer at another agency who you think would enjoy the conversation that I had with Celia today, don't forget to share the show. And with that, I'll wish you a great evening. Thanks again for coming on and sharing some wisdom with our folks.